Welcome back to Dead Good Book Reviews and to another What I'm Reading Right Now video here on the channel. This is the series where I talk about what I have been reading, what I'm currently reading, and what I shall be reading next. My reading speed has slightly improved on the last 2 weeks where I have not been reading very much. I finished 4 things since last time we spoke. Let's dive in. First up, I finished Master of Souls by Rena Barron. I did this via audiobook, and yes, finished the Kingdom of Souls trilogy, another trilogy knocked off the list. This was an enjoyable finale. I thought it was a good ending to a trilogy. Obviously, I can't talk about it too much here for fear of spoiling. Broadly speaking, this series has been about magic. It's a West African inspired world, but it's very much a fantasy world. That's just the inspiration. And it's a good story about demons and magic and mostly sacrifice. I would say sacrifice, a huge theme. Overall, had a good time with this series. I will be making a video for it that will be out in a couple of weeks, so I shan't spoil that here. But broadly speaking, I think if this is on your list of series to read, it's a solid trilogy. It's interesting. It is YA, I believe, technically. I think you can read it as adult. In terms of that kind of marketing category, I think it works for both. It didn't feel too YA to me, but I can see why it's been marketed that way. I finished City of Lies, and I ended up reading this in almost every single format available because I read some of it physically, I read some of it digitally, and I realised I actually had the audiobook, so I managed to finish this off by just sticking the audiobook on and having a good time. I did talk about this last week, but it is a siege mystery story about a city under siege where our main character is a poisoner. And yeah, I enjoyed this. I didn't love it as much as the first couple of times I've read it, but I think that's probably more to do with my mood and what my brain was able to cope with last week, as opposed to necessarily the quality of writing. I would quite like to go in and reread Hollow Empire, but now is not the time. And I know that, I'm respecting that, I'm just keeping it available should the mood strike me. City of Lies, still a really good book, still definitely recommend it, especially if you're looking for a slightly different feeling fantasy book that's quite low magic, but really interesting politics. It's great. It wasn't as great this time, but it was a me problem. After that, I did my reread of Karen Memory by Elizabeth Bear. This is an interesting one to talk about. I think the review is going to be a tricky one to film because I have mixed feelings about this. I do think it's an interesting book, and I really, really like the latter part of it. The last 100, 200 pages really get me every time, but there's a lot to question in it. This is set in an alternate 1878 Pacific Northwest, I think. But it's a very steampunk kind of world. Karen is a, what will YouTube not demonetize? Lady of the night, shall we say. And she gets caught up in a big conspiracy mystery, murder mystery going on in the story. It's not a murder mystery, but there is a mystery around a murder. I think some of the representation is a good effort, but not quite kind of thing, and it ruins some of the book elements. And yeah, I don't know that I'd 100% recommend it. I will probably unhaul it after the video's done, but I'll talk more about it in that video. You won't have to wait too long for that. I'm filming it today, so if you're on a Patreon tier that gets early access, you might get it today. And lastly, yesterday I finished Mind of My Mind by Octavia E. Butler. Library binding, it's very shiny. I'll just keep it down here for now. But no, that's the book we're talking about. This is another book in the Patternist series. I read Wild Seed last week and I enjoyed it. This is originally from 1977, and it is an interesting story. We have the immortal who is trying to achieve perfection in the breeding of humans with special powers. We have a telepath. This was shorter than the other ones and a little bit more abstract in its feeling at times, but I still thought it was really, really solid. I would still definitely go and look up the trigger warnings for this if you're planning on reading it, but overall I thought it was good. I think I liked it more than Wild Seed. I think it had a bit more groundedness to it that I enjoyed, and I'm interested to read the next book and see how they all kind of interconnect. I have ordered the next book into the library and the one after that, and I'm just hoping that the loans will come in at a reasonable time because I can't get to the library that often, so we'll see. I'm in the middle of a bunch of stuff. I have to mention that fabric book again because I've not read a single other page of it. I'm gonna save it for Christmas, I think. That might be the way it has to go. I'm listening to the audiobook of A Song of Wraiths and Ruin by Rosanne Brown because I want to finish that duology, and both of the audiobooks are on what was Scribd and is now called Everand. Not sponsored, but if you hear me mention Everand, know that it's Scribd. They've just rebranded themselves. I'm 38% of the way through this, but I've not picked it up for a few days just because I've been living that music life and not that audiobook life, and I need to get back to it. I'm really enjoying it actually this time around. The first time I read it, I was fairly meh on it, but I think possibly doing it by audio, I'm just absorbing more of the world, I'm having a good time, and I'm interested to see how I feel about it right at the end. There'll be a video out in due course. I did start reading This Wicked Fate, which is the sequel to This Poison Song, so YA, contemporary but fantasy, magical, slight connection with Greek mythology, but mostly plant powers kind of series. I'm 8% of the way through. I read it at maybe 11 o'clock at night one night when I couldn't get to sleep. I haven't progressed further. I will tell you about it when I'm done. And I have just started Shadow Baron. This is my read for today. I am 11 pages in, 2% of the way through this book, and so far that first chapter has been fine. I don't have much to report, but I'm excited to be reading a physical copy, and I will let you know more when I finish it. This is the sequel to Notorious Sorcerer, which I read last week. If you want to hear more about that, you can check out that video. I believe this is just a direct continuation from that original plot. I don't think it's a time jump or a companion or anything. But yeah, I will let you know what I think when I finished it. And then the other things I have to try and finish this week, maybe somehow, are The Echo Wife, which I know I said I was going to read last week, and normally I try and put all the reading from the previous week at the start of the next week, so it's all kind of rolling on. This isn't a priority right now. If I don't get to it, absolutely fine. It's my off week next week. I'll read it then, and it's not very long, so I might be able to tackle it over the weekend. I'm looking forward to reading it. It's just not a priority. And also Winter's Orbit by Everina Maxwell. This is not actually the final cover. This is an arc, but I'm really excited to read this again, and I just need to take some time. But I know that Notorious Sorcerer is going to take a minute or two. It's going to take a hot minute to finish, so I'm just setting my expectations solidly. I haven't added anything new to my TBR, except for picking up Mind of My Mind from the library, but that doesn't really count. So we're still progressing that well. In terms of new releases, there have been a fair few things that have come out in the last week or so. A Power Unbound by Freya Marske. I have a full review up for this, the entire trilogy up on the channel, so you can go check that out. But if you want a fun MLM romance, the end to a fantastic trilogy, that's wonderful, highly recommend. Bookshops and Bone Dust by Travis Baldry is also out now if you want a necromantic, cozy fantasy. A great time. Really love it. So, so good. Again, there's a review up already if you want to check that out. So yes, 2 fantastic new releases that I really, really enjoyed, so definitely check those out if you fancy it. Just a reminder for those who've made it all the way through to this section of the video, next week is my off week. I take the week off, I have a bit of a relax, a little bit of a break from my schedule. Do I still have 3 quite large books scheduled? Maybe, but don't worry about it too much. So yes, you won't see me on Friday. There will be a Monday video, and I'll be about on Discord and so such, but you won't have a video here. So in 2 weeks, I will come back and tell you about all the things that I've managed to read. Maybe I'll finish that fabric book. Who knows? You'll have to come back to find out. What have you been reading? What have you been up to? Let me know down in the comments below. While you're commenting, if you haven't already, please do subscribe. It makes me feel loved and appreciated. You can also come hang out on Discord where we have chill chats about books. I'd like to say an enormous thank you to all the ghosts who haunt me over on Patreon. They support the channel and in return get early access to videos, bonus content, live streams and more. If you'd like to join their number, that's linked below as well. Thank you so much to you for watching. That's all from me, and I will see you in the next one. It's gonna be some bloopers now. Oh, I can't put that there because I'm gonna need that book. Yeah, it's tricky. I think some of the reputation is a good effort, but not quite. What's the word I'm looking for? Not reputation. Representation. There we go, we got there in the end. Oh, why do I do this to myself? Why do I leave books over there? And most recently, yesterday, I finished Mind of My Mind by, I always say Olivia Atwater, it's not. This I'm 38 of the percent.